In the history of modern warfare, few weapons have earned the right to be called legendary. Fewer still have refused to leave the battlefield, even when newer, more advanced designs tried to replace them. This is the story of a rifle that served through 2 world wars, countless colonial conflicts, and regional wars spanning more than a century. A weapon so reliable, so beloved by the soldiers who carried it, that it remained in active combat service well into the 21st century. This is the story of the Lee-Enfield rifle, the bolt action that refused to die. The year is 1888. The British Empire spans nearly a quarter of the globe, and its armies face a critical problem. For decades, British soldiers have carried single-shot rifles while their enemies increasingly field repeating weapons capable of firing multiple rounds without reloading. In the mountains of Afghanistan, the plains of Africa, and the frontiers of India, British troops find themselves outgunned. The military establishment knows that the age of the single-shot rifle is over. What they need is a magazine-fed repeater that can maintain the accuracy and reliability British soldiers have come to expect, while delivering the rapid firepower modern warfare demands. The solution would come from an unlikely collaboration between a Scottish-born designer and British military engineers. James Paris Lee, born in Howick, Scotland, had emigrated with his family to Canada as a child and later moved to the United States. He had developed a revolutionary detachable box magazine system with a unique 2-column design that could hold more ammunition than competing single-column magazines. Meanwhile, William Ellis Metford had created an innovative barrel with 7-groove rifling designed to reduce fouling from black powder. When these two innovations merged with a rear-locking bolt system designed by Lee, they created something extraordinary. The first rifle combining these elements entered British service in December of 1888 as the magazine Lee-Metford. This early version carried 8 rounds in a detachable magazine and fired the new .303 British cartridge. The rifle represented a quantum leap forward from the single-shot Martini Henry it replaced. However, the original design would prove to be merely a stepping stone to something greater. The introduction of smokeless cordite powder in the early 1890s created a new challenge. The intense heat generated by this modern propellant caused rapid erosion in Metford's shallow rifling grooves. Engineers at the Royal Small Arms Factory in Enfield developed a solution: deeper, square-cut rifling with 5 grooves that could withstand the punishment of smokeless powder. In 1895, rifles fitted with these improved Enfield pattern barrels and an upgraded 10-round staggered column magazine entered service as the magazine Lee-Enfield. The foundation of a legend had been laid. Combat experience in the Boer War at the turn of the century revealed both strengths and limitations of the long rifle and carbine variants then in service. British military doctrine underwent a radical shift. Rather than maintaining separate long rifles for infantry and shorter carbines for cavalry and artillery, the War Office sought a universal-length weapon that could serve all branches. In 1902, trials began on a shortened rifle design. 2 years later, in January 1904, the short magazine Lee-Enfield Mk I entered service. But it was the refined Mk III variant, introduced in January 1907, that would become immortalized in military history. The genius of the Lee-Enfield lay not in any single revolutionary feature, but in the perfect synthesis of practical design choices. The rifle's action was smooth and fast, utilizing rear-locking lugs that allowed for a short bolt throw of just 60 degrees. This seemingly minor detail had profound implications on the battlefield. A trained soldier could cycle the bolt with minimal movement, keeping the rifle shouldered and maintaining their sight picture between shots. The rear positioning of the bolt handle placed it close to the shooter's hand, just behind the trigger. This ergonomic advantage made the Lee-Enfield significantly faster to operate than competing designs with forward-mounted locking lugs. The magazine capacity told its own story. While most bolt-action rifles of the era held 5 rounds, the Lee-Enfield carried 10 rounds in a detachable box magazine. This gave British soldiers twice the ammunition capacity of their German adversaries, armed with Mauser rifles, without reloading. The magazine could be loaded with 2 5-round stripper clips, or topped off individually while still attached to the rifle. In the desperate seconds of close combat, this advantage could mean the difference between life and death. The rifle's aperture rear sight represented another thoughtful innovation. Soldiers could adjust it quickly for different ranges and acquire targets faster through the peep sight than with the blade and notch sights common on other rifles. The system was graduated out to 2,000 yards. The SMLE Mk III measured 44.5 inches in overall length with a 25-inch barrel, longer than a carbine, shorter than a full-length rifle, serving all roles admirably. When the First World War erupted in August 1914, the British Expeditionary Force carried their Lee-Enfields into Belgium. What followed would become the stuff of legend. At the Battle of Mons on August 23rd, German forces advancing in close formation encountered British rifle fire of such intensity that they believed they faced massed machine guns. In reality, they were experiencing the devastating effectiveness of well-trained British infantry armed with Lee-Enfields. Professional soldiers of the BEF, products of rigorous peacetime training, could fire 15 aimed rounds per minute at 300 yards. Some exceptional riflemen achieved rates of 30 rounds per minute or more, reloading and firing with mechanical precision even under the stress of combat. The Mad Minute, as this rapid fire drill was known in training, proved its worth repeatedly during the opening battles of the war. German after-action reports documented the shock of facing this concentrated rifle fire. Advancing German infantry, trained to expect the methodical fire of their own Mauser rifles or the measured bursts of machine guns, found themselves cut down by what seemed an impossible volume of accurate fire from bolt-action rifles. Private accounts describe German formations being mowed down at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards, the British riflemen picking their targets with deadly precision. As the war ground on and trench warfare replaced mobile operations, the Lee-Enfield adapted. The Mk III variant proved itself in the mud and filth of the Western Front, functioning reliably in conditions that would render more precisely engineered rifles inoperable. When a simplified variant, the Mk III Star, entered production in January 1916, it retained all the rifle's essential combat effectiveness while reducing manufacturing complexity. The magazine cutoff and long-range volley sights were deleted as unnecessary for trench warfare, streamlining production and maintenance. By the end of the war, approximately 3.8 to 4 million SMLE rifles had been produced. The Lee-Enfield became more than just a weapon. It was a constant companion in the trenches, a lifeline in desperate moments, and for many soldiers, the tool that kept them alive. Veterans spoke of their rifles with a respect bordering on affection. They knew every quirk of their particular weapon, the precise feel of the bolt, the exact point where the trigger broke. In an environment where mechanical failure could be fatal, the Lee-Enfield earned a reputation for working when it mattered most. The rifle saw service in every theatre of the First World War. British and Commonwealth forces carried it through the deserts of Mesopotamia, the mountains of Palestine, and the mountains of Italy. Each environment tested the weapon differently, and in each it proved equal to the challenge. The rifle that had been designed for universal military service now fought in a global conflict unlike anything its designers could have imagined. When the guns finally fell silent in November 1918, the Lee-Enfield story was far from over. In the interwar years, the British Army changed its nomenclature system. In 1926, the SMLE Mk III became known as the Rifle No. 1 Mark III. Development continued, and by the late 1930s, a new variant emerged. The No. 4 Mark I, officially adopted in 1941, incorporated improvements in manufacturing, including a stronger action, a simplified bolt release, and an aperture sight mounted on the receiver rather than the barrel. The protruding barrel and more robust construction made it easier and cheaper to mass produce. The Second World War would test the rifle again on an even greater scale. As German forces swept across Europe in 1940, British soldiers at Dunkirk relied on their Lee-Enfields during the desperate evacuation. In North Africa, the rifle proved its worth in desert warfare against German and Italian forces. In the jungles of Burma, where moisture and heat destroyed lesser weapons, the Lee-Enfield continued to function. On the beaches of Normandy and in the hedgerows beyond, a new generation of soldiers learned to trust the rifle their fathers had carried in the previous war. Production during World War II exceeded all previous records. The No. 4 Mark I saw over 4.2 million rifles manufactured in Britain, Canada, and the United States. Canadian production at Long Branch Arsenal near Toronto produced approximately 1.5 million rifles between 1941 and 1945. American manufacturer Savage Stevens produced rifles marked with U.S. property for Lend-Lease distribution. Meanwhile, Australia continued manufacturing the older No. 1 Mark III at Lithgow Arsenal, and India's Ishapur factory produced over 600,000 rifles. The total production of all Lee-Enfield variants throughout history is estimated to exceed 17 million rifles. The weapon's versatility extended beyond standard infantry use. Sniper variants fitted with telescopic sights equipped British and Commonwealth sharpshooters throughout both world wars. These specialized rifles, carefully selected for exceptional accuracy and fitted with various scope models, proved devastatingly effective in the hands of skilled marksmen. The No. 4 Mark I-T sniper rifle, introduced in 1942, remained in British service until the 1990s, long after the standard rifle had been replaced. As World War II ended, most nations began transitioning to semi-automatic rifles. The Americans had their M1 Garand, the Soviets their SKS carbine. Yet the Lee-Enfield persisted. When British forces found themselves fighting communist insurgents in the Malayan jungle during the 1950s, they carried Lee-Enfields. The rifle's reliability in humid tropical conditions and its proven effectiveness at jungle fighting ranges made it more suitable than newer designs that required more maintenance. Britain officially replaced the Lee-Enfield with the L1A1 self-loading rifle in 1957. However, the transition took years. The rifle remained in widespread British service until the early 1960s. Reserve units and Commonwealth forces continued using it for decades longer. The 7.62mm L42, a one sniper variant, a converted No. 4 rifle, remained in British military service until the early 1990s. Perhaps more remarkably, the rifle found continued use far beyond Britain and the Commonwealth. As the British Empire dissolved, newly independent nations inherited vast stocks of Lee-Enfields. The Indian Army continued using rifles manufactured at Ishapur well into the 21st century, with some units still carrying them during operations in Kashmir. In Afghanistan, Lee-Enfields captured or supplied over the decades remained in use throughout multiple conflicts. Tribal warriors in Pakistan's frontier regions carried them alongside modern assault rifles well into the 2000s. The rifle's longevity stemmed from several factors. Its robust construction meant that properly maintained examples could function for decades. The powerful .303 British cartridge remained effective at ranges typical of infantry combat. The 10-round magazine capacity, while inferior to semi-automatic rifles, still provided sufficient firepower for many tactical situations. Most importantly, for nations lacking the industrial capacity to manufacture or purchase modern weapons, the vast stockpiles of Lee-Enfields represented an economical solution to arming their forces. The Canadian Rangers provide perhaps the most remarkable testament to the Lee-Enfield's endurance. Since 1947, this reserve force patrolling Canada's Arctic and remote regions had been equipped with No. 4 Mark I rifles. Operating in temperatures reaching -51 degrees Celsius, facing polar bears and performing sovereignty patrols, the Rangers relied on their Lee-Enfields for 7 decades. The rifle's simple mechanical design, wood stocks that remained manageable in extreme cold, and proven reliability made them ideal for Arctic service. Only when spare parts became unavailable did Canada finally replace them. Between 2018 and 2019, the Rangers transitioned to the Colt Canada C19 rifle. This marked the end of Lee-Enfield service with a major military force, over 130 years after the Lee-Metford, the design's ancestor, first entered British service. The rifle's influence extended beyond its direct military service. Its design principles informed later British rifles, particularly the emphasis on fast operation and practical accuracy over theoretical precision. The detachable box magazine system, invented by James Paris Lee, became the foundation for countless modern repeating firearms and automatic weapons. The two-column magazine design, allowing twice the capacity without increasing depth, became standard for military small arms worldwide. In shooting sports and civilian ownership, the Lee-Enfield found new life. Surplus rifles flooded markets after World War II, and their combination of historical significance, moderate cost, and practical accuracy made them popular with collectors and shooters. Target shooting competitions specifically for Lee-Enfield rifles continue to this day, with participants striving to achieve the rapid, accurate fire that characterized British military training. The rifle's cultural legacy endures in the nations that used it. For Britain and the Commonwealth, the Lee-Enfield represents the determination and competence of the ordinary soldier who carried it through 2 world wars and countless smaller conflicts. The image of a British Tommy with his SMLE or an ANZAC trooper at Gallipoli remains iconic. The rifle connects the present to more than a century of military history, a tangible link to the soldiers who used it and the conflicts they fought. What made the Lee-Enfield truly remarkable was not that it was the most accurate rifle of its era. The German Mauser and American Springfield held that distinction at long range. Nor was it the most elegantly engineered. The Mauser action was considered superior in pure design terms. What made it extraordinary was its perfect balance of practical features for actual combat conditions. It was fast, reliable, adequately accurate, and could keep firing when other rifles failed. The smooth bolt operation, generous magazine capacity, and ability to function in the worst conditions proved more valuable than theoretical perfection. The Lee-Enfield served longer than any other military bolt-action rifle in history. From Victorian colonial campaigns to 21st century counterinsurgency operations, it adapted to each new challenge. It survived 2 world wars, the transition to semi-automatic rifles, and the assault rifle revolution. When nations finally retired their Lee-Enfields, it was not because the rifles had failed, but because they had become anachronisms in an age of fully automatic weapons and advanced optics. Yet even now, somewhere in the world, a Lee-Enfield likely remains in service. In remote regions where modern weapons are scarce, the rifle continues its mission. After more than a century, the bolt action that refused to die still lives up to its reputation. It stands as a testament to thoughtful design, robust engineering, and the timeless principle that a weapon's true measure is not its sophistication, but its ability to keep functioning when soldiers need it most. The Lee-Enfield was a rifle designed for soldiers, by people who understood soldiers, and it served those soldiers faithfully across more than 13 decades of continuous military service. If you enjoyed this look into military history, make sure to subscribe for more stories about legendary and forgotten weapons. Tell us in the comments what firearm you would like to see next. Your suggestion might inspire our next episode.